Welcome. In this session, we are going to do a complete Power BI desktop walkthrough. We are going to follow this process, get the data. Usually it is unclean, so we will clean it. We'll also do some shaping. Then finally, we'll create a report and then share it in various ways. Now, invariably, data is going to change after some time, so we'll also see how to refresh the data. This whole process is like a tutorial. You can download the files and follow along with me. So the first step is to, of course, get Power BI. To do that, we have to go to a browser and go to this site. This is called powerbi.microsoft.com. You can say start free and get Power BI for free. Yes. And you have to enter an account which is actually not a personal account. So Hotmail, Outlook.com, Gmail will not work. Your company account should work. So once you log in using your corporate ID, specify some account information and get started. Now it will go to the Power BI website, but just next to your name there will be settings. In that there is download, and finally you download Power BI desktop. This trial is going to be there for 30 days, and if you don't renew, the Power BI free version will still continue to work for you lifelong. This is how Power BI desktop looks once you have installed it. Make sure it is the latest version. As of now it is July 2022, but whenever you are seeing this, make sure it is the latest version. The user interface menus may change a little over time, but the concepts which I am going to show are going to be fairly constant. So now that we have Power BI desktop, let's start with the process where we get the data. So I have data in two formats. I have two files to import. One is a transactional file, which is a CSV file. Every row here is a transaction. There is a location ID, then there is a date, type of credit card used, what was it used for, gender, amount, and age. Like this, we have lots of records. 26,000 plus records we have. So this is one CSV file. And the other data, because these are codes of locations. The actual locations are in a separate file, which happens to be Excel. And that's a simple Excel file which contains the code and the location name and the state. This is data from India. I strongly suggest to download these two files. The link is given in the description and follow along. Now remember, this is an Excel table and this data is already clean. This table has a name called locations and the sheet is sheet 1. So now let's import the data. I'm going to close both these files and we will see what happens. Now how do you import data? We go to the Home tab and then choose Get Data. But probably this is the first time you're looking at Power BI desktop. So like Office tools, there is a ribbon or the main menu as we call it. But in addition to that, there is a vertical menu on the left side and also lots of things on the right side. So on the left side, we have three tabs. One is for report, which we will use to create the report. Then we have data currently, which is empty, but we will fill it up by importing data. And then because we are importing two files and those two files are related, we'll connect them to each other. So this third one is called the model tab. So report tab, data tab, model tab. Depending on which tab is open, on the right side, we get some extra panes as well. But for now, we are going to just go to Get Data. Excel CSV are very common, but that's not all. I suggest you click on the More tab first and just eyeball all the options. Don't click on the All because that's a mixed list. Click on File, just look at what you can import data from. Why am I asking you to do it? Because it is possible that you are getting data from one of these sources indirectly. Maybe you are going to SAP and exporting data in CSV and then importing it. But then if you realize that, oh, this particular product is directly available here, then maybe you can eliminate unnecessary export import steps. That's why it's a good idea to just look at all the names of sources available here. Now in our case it is quite simple, so I'm going to go to File and choose Text CSV, which is the transaction data. I'll pick up that data. Once you choose the file, it doesn't open it directly. It shows you what is called a navigator dialog, and this is the navigator dialog. Whether it was Excel or database or a web page or a text file, this dialog is usually there. So what is it asking you to do? We have 26,000 rows, but it did not even attempt to open the entire file. Quickly it opened few records and it's showing it to you, which is a good thing. Now we want to make sure that the data is imported correctly. So usually you will never load it blindly like this. You'll always choose transform data. So when we click on transform data, another window opens which is called Power Query. Power Query means a very powerful tool to import and clean up data. So this is Power Query. It is just giving the name of the query as the same as the file name. It is showing me the data as it has detected. It has still not imported all the rows. This is based on just 1000 rows. And this is very good because maybe you have a file which is more than 1,000,000 rows. Opening that file itself becomes a pain. Here, it is just working on few rows from the data. We clean it up and then we import the actual data. By the way, Power BI does not have an upper limit of 1 million like Excel. And in Excel also, if you use data model, you can import more than 1 million rows. So remember, this Power Query thing which I'm showing you is common in Excel as well as Power BI. So now it is showing me the data as it is. No, it has imported the data. These are the steps which it has already performed. So it got the data, we gave the source. The second step it did is because we had a header line, it has already made that into a header. It's no longer data. So that is called promote headers. Use first row as headers. It has already done that. And it also went ahead and tried to find what column or which column is what type of data. So that's the change type. So look at this location ID 123 means it is numeric type of data. This it understood to be a date type of data, and so on and so forth. So one of the things you must do is look at all the columns which are relevant to you and cross check whether the data type is correct. In case the data type was not correct, and as an example I show you, suppose this came as amount as number but you wanted it as text. As an example, what would you do? You will click on this and say I want it as text. Now because the current step is change type and you're also changing type, it's saying should I add it as a separate step or replace current step? It is always better to add a new step. And now it converted it to text. Now why did I add it as a new step? Because this was just for demo purpose. I don't want this step, and that's why I added a separate step. Now if you make a mistake, you can always go to the relevant step and delete it. Then it comes back to previous state. So everything which you do to clean up your data will add one or more steps here. And that's a good thing. It's like recording a macro. So for now, our data is already clean, so there isn't much to do here. I have confirmed the data types. So I'm going to say close and apply. In case of Excel, there is close and load too, because in Excel, you can either import the data in a sheet or in data model. In this case, it's only data model, so we just say close and apply. So now it is importing the data. At this stage, it is actually importing the entire data. And see how quickly it imported the 26,000 plus rows. Now where is the data gone? It does show me a table. It does show me columns, but where is the data? So look at this. We are in report view. We haven't created any report yet. So if you go to the data tab, then it shows me the data, and now it is 26,000 plus rows. So far so good. So we have imported one piece of data. Now let's import the second piece of data. Now as you know, the second piece is in Excel. So what do? Home tab shows you get data, and because Excel is very common, it's right here, and we will import the location master. Now remember what was there in the location master? We had a sheet and a table. So it's going to show you both. In a given file, there can be multiple sheets and multiple tables. The idea is, and this is a rule, never import a sheet. Why? Because look at what happens. When I choose a sheet, it is showing me all kinds of junk because this is actually showing me everything in the sheet. Yes, our data is there, but these rows on the top were just the title for it. And here there is some unrelated data. So it's always a bad idea. Never import from sheet. When you go to location, on the other hand, because it's a table, it's beautiful and already done. So you enable this checkbox. In this case, I don't want to really transform data because I know it is clean. But the only thing we want to match is the location ID. Here, if you can see, is number. So this should also be number. Otherwise, the relationship will not get created. So let's just go to transform quickly and make sure the place code is 1 to 3. You can see here that both our tables are being shown. So all good right now. I'm going to say close and apply. Again, it's going to import that table, and now on the right side we can see locations table as well as simple TXN 2022. Now maybe I want to change some names. So that's called the transform part as well. The data came in some way and whoever decided the column names, that's okay. But one part of cleanup is also keeping good column names. We can change them here, but it's better to click on the transform data button so that we come back to our Power Query thing, and then we can repair the names of columns if we need to. In this case, for simple transaction 2022, I don't want to change any names of the columns, but this itself I want to change. So I can right click here and say rename or double click, and I'll just call it transaction. And locations are fine, so I'll just make the L uppercase. Now here there is place code, which is fine. This is a place, but I actually want to call it city. And this one, I know it's a state, so I want to give it a clearer name. That's it. Now notice rename columns step was added. So that's how incrementally we can keep cleaning up data. Now because we changed some things, it just refreshed that. So far so good. Now that we have got the data inside, we have to first create a relationship between these two tables. Because we want to tell Power BI that this location ID is actually mapped to this location ID. And that's how we are going to get the names of cities and state for every transaction. Now in Excel kind of thing, we would have done a VLOOKUP and that. So you can eliminate VLOOKUP even in Excel by importing these two tables in data model and then go to the model tab. In Excel it's called diagram view, but basically what it is showing me is all the columns available in all the tables. Instead of showing the data, it's showing me the structure of the table. Now I know that this place code here is what we want to map to location ID. Now of course their name is not same, that doesn't matter, but the data should be matching. So I can drag and drop from here to here. Now if there is a duplicate in the location table, then it will not allow you to do it because location is a master. What does that mean? In the location master, one location cannot be appearing twice. In our case, it's a clean master, one location appears only once. So it's telling me one. So it's a one to many relationship. Star means many, by the way. Why? Because one city can have multiple transactions. That's what. So this is how you create a relationship. Very good. Now look at our data or fields area here. I can see fields pane. These are called panes, by the way. P-A-N-E pane, not P-A-N pane. You can open and close them anytime. This thing has another property window. We are not going to cover that today, but you can open and close it. When I go to the data tab again, the same field list is there Very often you may have multiple tables, so you can right click on it and say expand all. That way you don't have to open each one of them separately. Now, when we are getting the report or when we are creating the report, look at these fields and think, is there any field I don't want to see when I am creating the report? So think again. Location ID is here, place code is here. Yes, they are required because that's how the transaction is getting mapped to the location, I understand. But when you are making the report here, do you really want to see the place code and location ID? No, because we already know the actual location name and the state. So these are not troubling us, but they're just making the list longer. So let's do something smart. I don't want to delete them. That will not help us because then the relationship dies. I don't want to see them when I'm making the report. I absolutely want to see them here. So right click and then say hide in report view. Isn't that smart? So it's reducing the crowding in our report view. Do this so that people who are actually going to use the report, it's easier for them to understand, and even for you, it becomes simpler. Right now it's a very simple situation, but as number of columns and tables grow, this really makes a difference. So far, so good. Now let's go to the data tab and do some interesting stuff. This is number, this is text, this is text. It's obvious. But there are some additional things we can do here which will help us in making better reports. Also notice, because I have hidden this is grayed out. Now if I go to the report tab, I will not see the location columns at all because we have hidden them from report view, and this is the report view. Got it? Now, city, I have just given the name of the column as city, but technically speaking, it's text. But actually we want to tell Power BI it's not just text, it's actually containing names of valid cities so that Power BI can treat them intelligently. For example, right now, if I go here and try to create a report based on state, I'm just going to choose this field state. Notice what it is doing. It is doing mapping, but sometimes it gets confused between cities and states and so on. So it's a good idea to explicitly tell Power BI that this column is actually going to contain geographical information of the type city, and these are states. Now, in your case, it may be different kinds of geographical information. Don't worry. So first select the column. Make sure you're in column tools. This comes dynamically only when you are in the column view. And now there is a very special thing here called data categories. So right now by default, everything is uncategorized. This can only be configured once you import the data. So now I want to tell this thing is this is actually a city. Very good. So data type is still text, but the data category is city. Very good. Now let's do the same thing for state. Uncategorized? No. State or province? Now sometimes it is country. So remember, county and country, the spelling looks same. In our case, we don't have country, but in case you are mapping it to country in some future report, don't do it by mistake for county, then it will not work. So in this case, let's categorize it as state. So this table is good. Now let's go to transaction table and see if we can do something in terms of refining the columns. Now, most of these columns are easy. The amount, when you drag drop amount, you want a sum, of course. So when you click on any column, it shows you the type. It shows you the formatting because it's a number. We have different types of formatting like Excel. But it also shows something called default summarization. Now for a text type, obviously there is nothing to summarize. But in case of numeric columns, and we know numeric columns because of this sigma sign, by default it does sum, which is good. Most of the time when we drag drop amount, we want a sum. We can always change it, but default what to do? Sum. Now that is not a good idea for age. Nobody wants sum of age. It doesn't make any sense. So what do? In numeric columns, you should explicitly check what is the ideal summarization desired for our purpose. So Of course, we could have said don't summarize, but generally we will want average age. So in this case, whenever you use the age column in any report, it will by default do average, and if required, you can change it to something else. Now, because it's a number, there is nothing else in data category we can do. So this kind of thing which I'm doing right now is called shaping of data. Shaping of data, right? So we have finished that. Now, before we create a report, we have done a lot of work, so it's a good idea to save the file. So I'm going to file save and save the file as demo1. So the PBIX file contains all the data, the reports, the cleaning steps, everything we have done so far. It's a self-contained file. Now, when we want to create the report, you go to the report tab. This gives you this blank space. Left side, report data model. Like that, on the right side, we have three vertical panes. One is the filter area. The second one is what kind of visuals or charts we can create. There are so many of them are available out of the box, and you can add more. There are hundreds more available. And finally, of course, we have the field list, which is common across all of them. I have already expanded it. In case you have not, just right click here and say expand all so that we can see all the columns. So this is a list of all the tables and all the columns in your current model. That's why it's called fields list. Now notice something interesting which it automatically did. What did it do? In transaction, we had a column called date. It's just a single column called date, right? Now it actually created a date hierarchy for it automatically. This is year, quarter, month and day. Now of course this assumes that your financial year starts on 1st Jan. In case it is not so, we'll have to use another approach, but it has dynamically created the hierarchy for you. You can collapse it or keep it open. Now this part is called the visualization part. Now this can get a little confusing. It is saying add data fields here, right? But how do we go about creating the visuals? These are the available visuals. These are the available columns in the data. So you put 2 and 2 together. To save space, I'm going to collapse the filter area. We will come back to it later. Now the idea is first you choose what kind of visual you want and then add the columns to it. You can start with columns and then choose the visuals also. But because we are learning new things right now, it is better to get familiar with the visuals. So I strongly suggest you take a pause the video right now and just look at the tooltips of all the visuals. Some of them you may not understand, that's okay. But at least you know the names, then we will figure out. So I hope you have seen all the names. Some of them are similar to what Excel has, some of them are different. Now what I really want to do is I want to just show the total amount. Now any of the visuals, when you click, it will ask you to specify what do you want to show in the visual. So you choose the visual from here and then you drag and drop the relevant fields from here. I just want to show the total amount. I want to show one thing only, just a number, no visual, no chart, no line, no pie chart. That simplistic visual is called a card. So now I'm going to choose the visual first, which is card. It created the card here. I'm just going to drag it so that we can see both next to each other. And it's saying, okay, add data fields here. Now, which is the data field I want to add? Amount. It is automatically going to get summed. It's showing me as 4 billion, fine. Now I don't want to see it as 4 billion. I want to see the actual number, fine. The idea is you create a visual first and then you customize the formatting related to the visual. So you choose the visual from this area, specify which fields go into it here, and then when you want to customize it, you go to the second tab, format your visual. Choose the visual, format the visual. Which visual will get formatted? The one which is currently selected. This is the visual, this is formatting. Now if I click outside, there is no visual selected. Now what happened? It is report page. That means it is customizing the whole page. So be careful about where you're clicking. Choose the visual, then choose format your visual. What I want to do here is the value. This is called callout, the value. Open this. So there are multiple categories. In Excel we get dialogues, whereas here you get a flat list like this, and that can open and close. So callout value is saying what display units. Automatically it is deciding whether it is thousands, billions, millions, trillions. I don't want that. So open this drop down and say don't do anything, let it be whatever it is. Now this happens to be a very big number, no problem. If you wanted to, you could have changed the font size and all. We are not going to go into that right now. The purpose right now is not to create a beautiful report, it is to learn how to make the report, and then you are smart enough to customize it. I want to call it total amount, but what is it showing me? Only the name. So this is the category label. I don't want it, but I still want to give a title. Now there doesn't seem to be any place for title. There is actually. This is visual specific formatting, and then there is general formatting, which is common across visuals. So what do I want to do? I want to enable the title. But of course, just enabling it is not enough. I have to specify the title. So I'm going to say, okay, that total amount is the title. Now that title is gone to the left side. Okay, I want it centered. There can be lots of things. It can be very confusing. Don't worry, just scroll and look at it logically. It's all simple, common sense based, intuitive. Don't get overwhelmed. So what did I do? I came to general, title, enabled, specified the title. That's it. Now, while we have the total amount, I will just arrange it here. Let us also have a count. How many transactions are we talking about? So I'm going to copy this visual, select it, copy it, and then paste it. Arrange it here. And notice when I'm dragging things like PowerPoint, it gives me guides. So if I wanted to start where this ends, it will help me understand where one finishes and align things to each other. But here I want to change amount, yes, but next to amount here, notice what is happening. This is sum. This is a default, remember? But now I want count. Now my title has gone wrong. No problem. We know how to do it. Go to this formatting, general. Title is already on, but it's wrong title. So I'll just call it number of transactions. Now let's create some other visuals. We have a gender. So let's create a pie chart of gender distribution. Pie chart is right here. You know the story. Now choose the visual and then drag and drop gender and amount. But wait, this is a very common mistake done. If you have a visual selected already, in this case this card, and then I click on the visual, this will get converted to a pie chart. You'll get confused. So when you are creating a new visual, make sure you click in a neutral area outside and nothing is selected on the page. Now when I click on pie chart, it will create a pie chart placeholder. I'll just drag it here for convenience. Now look at it. When I clicked on a card, it was just asking me one field because card can show only one thing. But when I click on a pie chart, it is asking me many things: legend, values, details, tooltip, and there may be something below. So don't get confused. For every visual, the amount of data points you need to provide is different. So according to the visual you select, you will have to populate the relevant ones. Obvious one is amount goes into value. Easy. Now remember, I could have done this by clicking here, but it will confuse you very soon. So although it is possible, it's always better to choose a visual, look at what is available, decide what you want to put where, and then drag and drop. So these are fields, field list. These things which are currently empty are called field wells. What do? Drag and drop amount into value. Of course, you want to break it down by something. That something is called legend. So gender, and now it will become two pieces like this. It's too small maybe. Okay, we will make it slightly bigger and fit it here. That's how you create visuals. So let's create a couple of more. I'm going to create, let's make this occupy this area right now. Now let's create a stacked bar chart. So this is a bar chart. This is also column chart, stacked or clustered, two types. Stacked means one on top of each other. Clustered means one next to other. So let's create a simple column chart. Now notice the mistake I made. My pie chart itself became column chart. So that's where you have to be careful. So before you click here, don't click and look, is anything selected? Am I changing it? Am I creating new one? So click outside. Now you do this and let's do expense type. Where do we want to put expense type? In x-axis. And where do we want to put amount? In y-axis. So it just gives us a column chart. Simple and effective. But now we have something called card type also. Might as well have a pie chart for it. So I need some space. So I'm going to divide this space and create one more pie chart. And there I will put type of card and amount in value. Now notice we are not really able to see almost all 24, 26 like that. So there is another type of visual which may tell you better. Now you can see which one is bigger or smaller. So this is a nice type to look at compared to pie charts. Explore, experiment and understand what works well for you. Now of course we can go into great details of customizing these visuals, but I'll give you one example and then you figure it out. Needless to say, we want the data labels here. How do we do that? Choose the visual, go to formatting, and now notice pie chart had very few items here. This one has many more items. So what do we want? We want data labels. So enable data labels and there they are. Now sometimes the data labels are not visible properly, so you can put a background to them. Alright, so far so good. Now why am I reserving this space? What am I going to do here? Of course we are going to put geography. So there are lots of maps available. We will use this map. So first let me give it some space, align it nicely. We'll use this space maybe, and we will put state in the location area. In this case state is just text, but it is automatically finding the lat longs. In some other data you may actually have two columns which contain lat long. Then you can drag those columns here. But in this case we just have state, it figured it out. You don't have to worry, it uses Bing Maps API to do the job for you. It is quite accurate, it understands postal codes, street addresses, places, not just cities, places as well. So try it out. Now the problem is the states are there, the tooltip will tell you what the name of the state is, but all the bubbles, as we call them, are the same size because we have just plotted state. We have not defined the bubble size, and obviously that is going to be amount. So we will put amount here. And now we can actually see the distribution of our business across different geography. While we are at the map, there is something we should also know. Maps, this is the standard default map. When you go to format the visual, maps have a lot of settings. Some of them are interesting. This is the road map. Depending on your business, you may want the map the way a satellite looks. So that is called aerial map. And then there are other types of maps. The data is same, just the look and feel is different. The road is default. Depending on your context, you can choose. If you say don't show labels, then it's just a blank map. Generally not a good idea. Now controls is also important. Auto zoom, zoom buttons you should show, and lasso button you should show. We will see why they are relevant later, but just go to controls and enable all three of them. Another thing, bubbles. These are the bubbles. What do they do? Well, the bubble size, okay, that's okay. Bubble colors, default. You can change if you want. If you want to color code, but that's going to be a painful thing because for every state you'll have to manually do it. I'm just showing you the level of customization which is available. Category labels means what? the actual name. So maybe instead of showing this map based names, you switch off the map names and then just enable your category labels. That's an option you have. Maybe that makes more sense in a given situation. Right now I'm going to switch them off because it's getting too crowded, and I'm going to enable the labels. Alright, so far so good. There is also a heat map option, but we will not go into detail. You can explore it on your own. Now we have done all this very well. Now you would have said that I could have created pie chart, column chart, and even tree map is now there in Excel. What's the difference? I could have created these charts. In fact, in Excel also there is a map and a 3D map. So what is the big deal? The big deal here is, look at this equivalent in Excel. In this Excel file, I have a map, I have the same charts, but there is a difference. Those charts do not talk to each other. And that's the benefit of Power BI. We created these charts independently. But now, if I want to see this is male and this is female, how my overall business is being dealt with by female customers, I click on this. This is interactive. I click on the female part of the pie chart and everything gets filtered, which is now showing you the contribution by female customers versus male customers everywhere. Even the bubble size is actually changed. We are not able to see them. But now when I want to get rid of that filter, what do? Click on the filter again. So now the filter is gone. So if I want to see how silver card is doing, how many people are using silver card? So notice this changed. The tooltip tells me the highlighted amount is so much and the total amount is so much. So the dark part is highlighted. This is the overall. Also notice the number of transactions is changing. Number of total amount is changing. Bubble sizes are changing, and so on and so forth. So that is the whole idea. Now notice when I clicked on this one, compare again, this was showing me whole of the region. When I clicked on this one, apparently nobody is traveling, maybe due to COVID. And then what happened? There weren't so many states participating in travel. So only few states, so this zoomed into the available data. That's what auto zoom means. On the other hand, wherever I click is a filter, isn't it? So if I click on one of the geographies, will it be a filter? Absolutely. So I click on this, now it's showing me contribution of this state versus this state versus this one. Now because it's a map, I may want to see what is happening in this region, the southern region or northern region. That's why there is this rectangle select. Remember, we had enabled lasso select or rectangle select. So click on this and now it becomes a plus sign. So you can select things like this. Now while looking at it, you may or may not suddenly know what is the filter being applied. So look at this. Whenever you hover on any visual, you see this thing here, right? That funnel actually shows you currently things are getting filtered by these states. Same way, I am changing the filter to medical now. Click becomes a filter. Control click becomes additive filter. So now the filter is medical plus fuel. I don't have to guess. All visuals will show you the currently applied filter. So it's quite intelligent. So now we can go on and create a visual, more reports, more interactivity, but you get the idea. This concept is called interactivity or cross filtering. So what I also want to do is I have a lot of transactions. I want to see small transactions versus big transactions. So I want some kind of filtering based on the amount of the transaction. So what I'm going to do is, because it's filtering, I'm going to choose slicer. Slicer is like a filter. Now I'm just going to adjust it in the available area. Usually we use slicers for text. For example, I want to filter by month. Yes, I can add that a filter and say, okay, what happened in Jan? This is what happened. And what happened in March? This is how filtering works. But in this case, I want to put amount. The amount is a number, right? So what is it showing me now? From 1000, every unique value in the transaction. It's going to show me all the way up to the highest number. That's not what I want. So when you add a slicer, we have options. So when you add a slicer, we have options as to what kind of slicers are available. The list drop down, we don't want any of them. We want between. This is best for numeric. So I can actually see the minimum and maximum. It can now show me only high value transactions just by dragging. Now notice there are only 100 big transactions from 700,000 to 900,000. On the other hand, I want to see small transactions. I can do this, and there are lots of them. So this is how interactivity is built into this. Now if I want to get this back, I don't have to drag. There's an eraser here. This eraser means clear selections. So it will come back to full. So I hope you have got a good idea of how this works. Now one more thing before we publish this report. At this stage, let's save it. Now usually we put these reports in PowerPoint and then show one report after another as one slide, second slide, third slide. Now in this case, we have an interactive dashboard. Now what do we copy paste? Yes, we can copy paste the whole thing in PowerPoint, and I'll show you a nice way of doing that later. But here itself, I can show so many different aspects of my business. So I want something like a PowerPoint where slide by slide, step by step, I want to show specific aspects of information. So before we do that, we have to understand the concept of bookmarks. I'm going to close this right now, so increase some space. Now when you go to the View tab, you will see something called Bookmarks. So that opens another pane. Bookmark means the current state of your report. So I'm going to add a bookmark. Just double click on it and give it a name, All, because it's actually showing the entire data, All. Now what I want to do when I'm presenting this report to my boss or colleagues is I want to talk about, let's say, the medical part of the story, because that seems to be giving us highest revenue. So I filter on medical, right? And you will notice that there is less contribution from male and more from female. So I also want to filter on female. And now these two are the filters, and I want to discuss this and this. But I don't want to do this in front of everyone and click and control click. So I will add another bookmark. And here I will say medical, female. Need not be verbose, as long as you understand, that's fine. Now I want to remove the filters. I don't have to click here. I just click on all and it comes back. This comes here. So I'll just add two more. Let's add one for a particular state called Maharashtra. Add a bookmark. Rename it Maharashtra. And come back to all. And let's say platinum plus gold. Again, add one more bookmark. So we have created 4 bookmarks, and now we can use them during our presentation like a slideshow. So when I now go to View option, notice what happens. It shows me the first bookmark and it shows me next and previous button. So now it's going to traverse medical and female filter. Then it is going to show state of Maharashtra, and then it is going to show me platinum plus gold. So this is called storytelling, and you can do it in an elegant manner using bookmarks. So now that we have created the file and the report, let's save it. But now the question arises, how are we going to share it with people? What do we do in Excel? We send the file to people physically as attachment, or we put it in some shared folder and people access it, or nowadays we put it on SharePoint or OneDrive or Teams and share a link. All of those options will work with PBIX file also. So when you send the entire PBIX file to someone, they can see your raw data and completely modify or delete the report. You can't control that. Usually when you want to share the report, that report should be read-only and people should not be able to see your underlying data. That is possible only when you upload the report or publish it to the web or the Power BI portal and then share a link from there. Now in order to do that, we'll have to sign in. Remember, we just created a Power BI account, so I'm going to sign in using that account. So now the sign in is done. Go to the Home tab and choose Publish. So when I click on Publish, it will ask me to choose a workspace. So I'm going to choose a workspace called Demo 2022. It will upload the report as well as the associated data to Power BI. Once the publishing is done, it will give you two links, one to the report itself and one to another thing called Quick Insights, which we will see in a separate video. So let's go and look at the report. We published one report, but we see two entries here because this is the report and this is the data associated with the report. Technically, it's called a data set because we will usually have more than one tables in it. So let's look at the report itself. Click on the report. It opens exactly like what we did on the desktop side. The difference is this report is currently in read mode. And because it is in read mode, this is what your viewer of the report will see. They will see the report, they can interact with the report, but they cannot change the visuals. They can see filters, but they can't change the visuals. Now you are the owner of the report, so you can by all means click on the edit button, and then what we got on the desktop side, almost same functionalities available here as well. So generally what you will do is you will create the desktop report and publish it, and now the step left is to share it. Now if you click on share button, you need the paid or pro subscription. If you don't have that, you can continue to send the PBIX file as we discussed earlier. Now if you have the Power BI Pro version, then it will give you options. So anyone in the organization can see, people with existing access can see, or specific people. Now if you are earlier mailing the report to someone, typically you will choose this option, and generally you don't want them to share it further, so you can disable this option. And you can also choose whether they can use your underlying data and create their own reports, which we don't want. So click apply, and now it will ask you names of people who need to see this report. These people don't need a license. They can use the free version of Power BI as well. And once I do this, they will get a link. When they click on the link, the report will be visible to them. It will be interactive, but they will not be able to see the data or edit the report itself. There are some other options you should know. For example, most of us want to put the report in PowerPoint. So from export, if you choose PowerPoint, you can just embed it as an image, and when you click on it, it will come to this dashboard. Or if you have the latest version of PowerPoint, then you can embed live data as well. So when you click on this option, copy the link and then click open in PowerPoint. So it will open PowerPoint for you. In the PowerPoint, it will actually embed the report directly. Now you can copy this slide and paste it somewhere else in your presentation. Now assume this was your presentation. It also adds another slide to tell you what to do in case there is an add-in problem. But in this case, it has already happened. I am running this presentation in PowerPoint now, and see what happens. This is not a static picture. I can actually interact with it in PowerPoint itself. And now if I choose something and keep it, in PowerPoint, if you do extended press, it can even become laser pointer and all that. All the features of PowerPoint are now available. So this is best of both worlds. On the other hand, if you wanted to export it to PDF, that is also available. And then lastly, there is an option called Analyze in Excel, where you want the data itself to be analyzed in Excel. Now what did we do? We created a report, we shared it with people, we put it in PowerPoint. There is one more kind of sharing you should know about. So I'll go to my workspace. This is my report, which we already have shared somehow. This is my data. So if you have Power BI Pro, you can actually share the data itself with people, because maybe other people in your department are using the same data and creating some different report. Why should they waste their time in cleaning up and creating relationships? All that you have already done. So you can give them ready-made data, save their time, so they can work on the analytics part. So how do you do that? You click on the three dots next to the data set and then go to settings. In settings, you can decide how do you want to share the data, and sharing the data is called endorsement. By default, it is not shared. You can say promoted. If you are an admin, you can also say certified and choose make it discoverable. Now, once you do that, people across your organization can actually look at this data and directly use it in Excel. So this is a blank Excel file. This has to be Office Pro Plus version of Excel, the cloud connected version of Excel, not the desktop version of Excel. Now, when you go to Excel, you have data. This is Power Query, so get data is very much there. But here you will see another option from Power Platform. And there, my Power BI is available here. So if you say Power BI and your company name, the data sets which have been published, and we just published one right now, will directly appear here. So our data set was called demo. Here is our data set which we just published. Expands to show me what are the tables available, and directly I can insert a pivot table. Notice this is a blank Excel file. There is absolutely no data here either in sheet or in data model. But I can directly insert a pivot table and continue to analyze data in Excel itself. So now you can use that data set across the organization without others having to do any cleanup or import. Notice the data is coming from the cloud, but I can actually create a regular pivot table right here, exactly the way we are used to. So you're getting best of both worlds, Power BI as well as Excel. Now the last step is, sooner or later that CSV file is going to have more data and the Excel file maybe has more data. So assuming the files remain the same, only the data has grown, all that you have to do is say refresh and publish again. That's it. So now let's look at the process which we followed during this tutorial. And I hope you have got the clarity about exactly how to go about doing it. It may be overwhelming to start with, but go back, rewind, look at specific steps, try it out with the data which I have given you for download, and I'm sure you will have more confidence in using Power BI. I also have a detailed course in Udemy on Power BI where the assumption is you know Excel and from there you want to learn Power BI, which simplifies the journey. I also have a separate video on the difference and similarities between Excel and Power BI. I strongly suggest you see that video as well. Now in this case, our data was fairly simple, but in general, you will have to do a lot of data cleanup. So I have lots of videos for data cleanup situations, consolidation, data type mismatches, and so on. I have given all the links in the description. With that, let's end this tutorial. Let me know if I have missed something or if you want more topics to be covered, and I'll be happy to create more videos for you. Now, I'm sure you found this useful, so why not share this, subscribe to my channel, and continue the process of learning in the long run. Thank you and take care.